Hello, everyone. Good night. I'm so glad that you are here. This is our first parent chat of 2024. I feel like it's been forever since our last parent chat because I enjoy these so much. We have a wonderful presentation, as always, a wonderful presenter, great information. And I can't wait to just dive in and get started. For those of you who are new to Parent Chat, who haven't been here yet, let me go over just how we do things around here. Our sole purpose is to really support you. And we know that you taking your time here tonight, it's a valuable time, precious resource of yours. And so we are going to make the most of it by having an interactive event here. You can ask questions as we go. The best way to do that is the Q&A box, which you'll find at the bottom. And that puts all of the questions in a tidy little place that we don't lose them. In the chat box, you are welcome to chat away, put your thoughts as we're going, questions, Q&A box. But we're going to ask you some questions. And when we ask those, you can put those answers in the chat box. Here's the thing about the chat box. If you would rather not share your name, you can go to the very bottom. There's a little arrow in the chat box, and you can say hosts and panelists only. So we will see your name, but we won't say your name, and nobody else can see that you have put that in there. We want to make sure that you have the space you need to ask the questions that you need help with. So without further ado, tonight we are talking about validating emotions. And this is something that comes up quite a bit with parents that I work with and that Marcelle works with as well. What does that exactly mean? We hear it a lot, but does it mean condoning everybody's behaviors and emotions? No, it's a little bit different. So we're going to dive into that, and you're going to leave with some very good action points that you can actually do these in your household, and you'll feel like as a parent, you've got some new tools to use. So let me tell you a little bit about Marcelle. She's the proud founder of a company called Fuel Links. Some of you may have already seen her doing presentations, or she has a great Instagram presence and has been on TV. So she's all over the place. So you may have seen her before. Two of the most significant roles in her life, being a mother and an educator, have guided her to pursue her passion in developing an intentional product that promotes lifelong social and emotional skills in children. Fuel Links was born from her experience and knowledge as a mother and a teacher. Fuel Links focuses on building emotional intelligence in children, which we all know is so important. The ability to identify, understand, and manage their own emotions and the emotions of others. Scientific research has shown these skills to foster lasting benefits of greater self-awareness, quality relationships, greater satisfaction at school and work, increased academic achievement, and greater empathy. Fuel Links was intentionally created to support children in gaining positive, healthy, and lasting benefits. And we, of course, know that tonight it's parents, and you're going to support them to learn all of these things. So Marcelle, I would love to welcome you on screen, and I really appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for the very warm welcome. And I am really thrilled to be back. This is my second visit here at Parent Chat. And I want to thank the foundation and Sheri as well for the invitation. And thank you so much for being here tonight. We are obviously parents or caretakers of kiddos. And I just want to say, I commend you for wanting to just become stronger in your parenting and being here.
Very well said. Yes, everybody here is here for a reason, and that's to become a more positive, more impactful, and purposeful parent.
That's wonderful. Thank you. So should we get to it? I can go ahead and start sharing my slides here. And
we have an hour. For those of you who have been to Parent Chat, you know that these hours fly by because of the information is always great. So let's share your slides and we'll go from there. I may interject with questions, and if, again, anybody who is listening, if you have questions, ask them whenever they come up, and then I will bring them to Marcelle when the time is right.
And that is so fantastic because we are going to do better at this than we just tried this a minute ago. Okay.
There we go.
Like all of a sudden when everybody else is on, you know,
right,
to get it right. So Okay, as Sheri so beautifully said, my name is Marcelle Waldman, and I am here in close by in the local community. And I feel really fortunate to not only be a community parent, having been an elementary school teacher for many years, and then just really focusing in on the social emotional skills for our children and how very important this is for their life now as children, as young adults, and then going into adulthood. And as their parents and caretakers, I know that we could probably all agree that, 100% of us could say that parenting can be difficult. And so we're here tonight to talk about a really important topic about validating our kids' emotions and why it's so important. And as Sheri said, walk away tonight with some like very tangible things that you can either continue doing, or maybe you will learn something new tonight to walk away with and try in your homes. So thank you so much for being here. So we'll go ahead and get started.
And I like that you said that, like Marcel, sometimes there's things we actually know, but it's kind of like, oh, I kind of forgot about that. Or I haven't been doing that very well lately. So it's always good, even if we quote know it, that we review
Yes.
it and are reminded.
Absolutely. And even as, Sheri and I talk with, other parents or talk with children or whomever we are working with, it even as our own selves, I'll speak for me, like as a mother, I'm like, oh, I need to continue practicing that at my house.
Yes,
So yes,
exactly.
we might be able to be here educating, but we also have, our own struggles as parents and caretakers. So
Absolutely.
I am really big on quotes. And the reason why is because there are so many incredible people out there that have put in the time and resources to the research. And I am not a researcher, but I love learning, and I love being able to support parents and children through these sorts of pieces of life. So this is Janet Lansbury, and it says, acknowledging isn't agreeing with or condoning our child's actions. It's validating the feeling behind them. And that's really the core of what we're going to talk about tonight, because as Sheri said, we can start thinking like validation must mean that I'm okay with it, I agree with it, and really it doesn't. It doesn't mean we are okay or condoning what maybe is happening in our homes or what our child is presenting to us, but it does mean that we are listening, and it means that we're letting them know that. And so our kids are born with a whole lot of feelings and none of the skills to manage those feelings. And so it is our job as parents, as the models in our homes, to really show children and show our kids not only what it is to feel a feeling, but then what do I do with that? And so that gets into that management. And as we were as Sheri was introducing me, talking about that emotional intelligence piece. So what that really means is that one's ability to understand how they themselves are feeling, be able to put words with that, and be able to cope with those feelings, which is the piece of sort of the regulation of those emotions. And so there's a lot to cover there when we talk about what emotional intelligence is. But the piece that we're really going to focus on tonight is how do we let our kids know that when they are feeling something, that we are there with them and that we are there as their trusted, supportive adult. So while there's lots of emotions and there's lots of big feelings, some of this is, some of the things your children are still working on, and we are as adults as well. A lot of us didn't grow up with what it's like to feel all the feelings and be able to manage those emotions and talk about them and have those conversations with our own families. And so we know better now that this is so important. So what we want to start by doing when we are letting our child know that we are validating an experience that they are having. And typically those experiences may be coming with a big emotion. And so there are some things that we can do to let them know that we are a caring adult. We are loving them no matter what. And even in those moments when they feel really tough for us, as I started to say in the beginning of this, 100% of us can agree that parenting can be hard. So think of that moment. Okay, so let's take a minute. Think of that moment where you think the thing that your child might be having a tantrum about seems super silly to you. Whether it is, the little kiddo in your home who wants the pink cup and not the purple cup, or you think of your older child, right, who really wants to go out with some friends to a movie, and maybe tonight isn't the night that we're going to do that, or maybe it's not the movie that you're okay with your child going out to see, and now you've got a teenager having their tantrum. Okay, so think of that. And if you want to share of like what the thing is that comes into your head, we always love seeing that in the chat if you're willing to share what that might be.
So let me just reiterate that. So what we want in the chat box is, when was the last time or a time that your child had what seemed like maybe an overreaction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Maybe
to
we can
you
include
felt
our
like,
own experience. Like when we did that, we do that sometimes, right?
oh, yes, absolutely. Yes. And we get to that in the end where our piece is in that, right? Because us as
Yeah.
parents, we can have ours as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thinking about that time, what you did or didn't do during that time is not really what we want to go back to necessarily. But what I want to bring you to is, did you validate your child at that time? Like, I can understand that you are feeling frustrated that I am not going to let you see that movie, or I can see that you are feeling very sad that the purple cup is dirty. Okay, so that would be a way of sort of not judging that your child or your teenager is having some big emotions about an experience, and yet you are acknowledging and you're communicating to them that you see how they're feeling, you can hear how they're feeling. Okay, so that is really where we start with what that validation looks and sounds like.
And I'm going to throw this out there. You're not saying figure out how to fix it, which all of us like kind of want to do. Just validating, noticing, and validating it.
Yes. So this next piece is Dr. John Gottman, who is actually a local person here from the Gottman Institute, and says, by acknowledging our children's emotions, we are helping them learn skills for soothing themselves, skills that will serve them for a lifetime. So now we're going to talk about how our children were born with all of these emotions. Now we're talking about, okay, when they're tough emotions or when they're emotions that might feel more positive, right? Emotions are not good or bad. Emotions are really telling us something. They're information, right? So whatever the emotion that we are feeling as an adult or our children are feeling or our youth are feeling, right? That is a natural part of human behavior. Those are things that we will all experience. And so what we need to do is say, okay, they're not good. Like, anger or frustration is not a bad emotion. It's telling us that something we care about is giving us, an emotion and a feeling and a response. But it doesn't mean that happy is good and, angry is bad. So I would love for you to wrap your head around that, because it's really important through the research that's out there that we recognize that these feelings are something we will all be experiencing. They are normal to us, they are valid, and they are part of human behavior. Okay, so now how we respond to our child having what may feel like a tough emotion, right? We want to be responsive to that and not reactive. So reactive, as Sheri and I have discussed before, right? Reactive is the thing that we do very quickly. We put no thought. We might start having our own tantrum at that time because we're feeling really overwhelmed as a parent for whatever might be going on that's feeling tough for our child. And so instead, we are reacting to the situation instead of responding. So response is sort of giving a little space in between the thing that's occurring and then our response to our child. So it could be counting to 10. It could be taking a deep breath or maybe a few deep breaths, right? So how do we now come to our child who might be having a tough emotion? We need to do our best to model what it is that we want our child to learn, which is take a moment, whatever the thing is that gets you to calm yourself a bit before you are able to go into your child who might be having a reaction or a response that is a bit tougher. So we don't want to be afraid of how our children are feeling. So if our child is feeling grief, right? Maybe our child has experienced a loss of some sort. Maybe it's a loss, maybe a friend moved away. Maybe it's a loss, there's been a death. Maybe it's a loss of a pet. Maybe it's grief over an exam they took and they really felt like they were just going to hit it out of the park and they studied really hard and they got their results back and they felt grief over that. Like, I really thought I was going to do really great here. Don't be afraid of how your child is feeling. It is so important that whatever it is that hopefully through time, they will learn new vocabulary and be able to express that and label that to you. It's really important because the more we can respond appropriately, not being afraid of how our children are feeling, they are building their own self-awareness, which is, again, understanding how they feel, which also brings on amazing, important foundations for our children with self-confidence, being resilient. So when those tough things are happening, the ability to bounce back and deal with what that is, and then be able to sort of move on to whatever is, next. That sense of grit and drive. So those are all really important things that come out of our children feeling some of that tougher stuff, but us leaning into that with them and not, as Sheri said too, and we'll hit this in a minute, but not always rescuing and not always fixing it for them. That's another really important piece we're going to hit here in just a minute. Sheri, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Definitely. So one of the things that we have to remember is that our kids' emotions are not in a vacuum or a bubble. We've got all of our emotions, as you pointed out. So we have to make sure that we're not afraid of all of our emotions either. Mm-hmm. If you're angry at your kids, that's okay. It's the behaviors, as you said, how you respond. Mm-hmm. And what I find working with a lot of teens, tweens and teens, is that their parents are very supportive, but it's with the more difficult, not good or bad, but the more difficult emotions, let's say, that we as a society kind of try to move people through those really quick because they're uncomfortable to us. So we have to get comfortable with all the range of emotions in order to be responsive to our kids in a really nurturing and caring way, because they feel our response. And I was thinking as you were explaining this, Marcelle, like with a 2-year-old, when you're like, oh my gosh, are they going to throw a fit because I have to take this toy away, or they don't get that candy in the store, and you're like just waiting and anticipating that temper tantrum. You got to be calm and be ready for it at all ages, not just 2 years old.
Absolutely. Just a quick little personal side note as well. I spent just this last summer helping put on a bereavement retreat for some parents and for some moms. And those moms each have had the loss of a child, and they all have other children in their lives. And we used an emotion wheel, and we really got into what those emotions are, and even noticing each and every one of those women said, I have not put these words to how I'm feeling. And it was just magical to see that us as adults, we probably, I would say many of us, a very large percentage of us, because of the people that I have spoken to, and Sheri, I would say that you would probably also say the same. We just didn't grow up having the knowledge and understanding of how important this is. So when we're talking about what you just mentioned about us also noticing our own feelings, is that there's also a piece of that we are learning along with our kids as we are modeling and teaching this, because many of us just didn't have this. And I've shared some of my own personal things on my social media about when I sort of came into that knowing of like, I don't have the words for how I'm feeling about this really very tough thing I'm facing. And so I would encourage the parents out there. There's a ton of, emotion wheels and those sorts of things, but like, go look at them, even print one off. Like, there are so many words that are just, the nuances are just different enough. But back to these women, just watching these women really explore those different words and emotions, and we're looking, some of them are looking them up, and they're, what do these mean, what are the definitions? And so if we can gain a better understanding, we are definitely modeling that for our children in a really healthy way, and that it's okay for me to tell my child, I am feeling very frustrated right now because, or I'm feeling frustrated right now and I'm going to have to walk away, and I will be back when I can calm down. Those are the things that we want to continue modeling for our children so that they then take that on for themselves.
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that kind of there's a little bit of, for some people, a gray area. It's like, do I act like a robot? Do I show my feelings? And I think show your feelings. And as you said, you're calling me saying, I feel frustrated, I need to walk away. Those all are great. You're role modeling, labeling, and what you're going to do to respond to that feeling. Where it gets dicey is when, if you're really angry, you just are letting it all go, and with rage or uncontrollable sobbing. Those, especially for our littles, can be very overwhelming. So we just have to, again, the feelings are always okay. It's our responses and how we're role modeling for our kids that is really where we're teaching them this.
Absolutely. Yes. So this was a little bit touched on, but it's really important that we allow our children to go through those tougher emotions, because not only are they learning, as I said before, that piece of resilience and grit and working through things that are tougher in life, that will serve them forever. They are also learning how to process those tough emotions, how to use problem-solving skills, and then hopefully eventually that piece of being able to move on from that. If we try to suppress or spare them of those emotions, like, oh, you're fine, you don't need to be mad about that, or you don't need to be, you don't need to be feeling anxious, everything's okay. Well, it's okay to reassure your kids to a point, but what we don't want to do, again, is dismiss. So validating, I understand that you're feeling, anxious. Let's talk more about that, or again, very much dependent on the age of the children that we have in our homes. But we do not want to spare them from feeling those tougher feelings. It's really important that we let them move through those and be there as, like we said, be there as the model, be there as the trusted, safe adult. I mean, that is the most important thing any child can have, is a place to fall and be that person. And being that person is, I will guess why many of you are here tonight. Like, this is what this is for. And so letting your children, like I said, process, problem solve, help them move through that. And then as they're getting older, like, those are the skills that they are hopefully going to be taking on and be able to do. But letting them know that what they're feeling is valid, that's what they need to hear from their caretakers.
Absolutely. One thing before we move on from this,
Yeah.
you have used the word resilience. So how I've learned, like, what that word means is, it doesn't mean that you just power through everything. And it doesn't mean that you don't feel the feels. It means that you have these emotions, big letdowns, all of that, and you're still able to move through it in a healthy emotional state. So
Yes.
resilience does not equal powering through, not processing emotions, ignoring emotions. There's actually a lot more to that. Just want to point that out.
Yes, definitely. I love that you mentioned that. Yeah, it's not about just, I don't feel that, so I'm strong and here we go. That is not what it is. So yeah, that's great. And that in of itself, as you're saying, like, that is, resilience is a huge topic. But yeah, just as you said, I would agree that got to feel the feelings and then move through those and learn how to do that. And then that moving on piece is really being able to, like, can I get back to what I was doing when I was having those tough feelings, or can I get back to whatever I was going to do next? And not just, what we don't want to see is sitting in that. So sitting in that, anxiety all day long. How do I move through that? How do I, what coping skills do I have? What have I learned? What can my parent support me with in giving me some of those tools as well? So this next quote says, when little people are overwhelmed by big emotions, it's our job to share our calm, not join in their chaos. One of our favorites, right?
I love this. Love it.
As Sheri was saying, like, there's those moments that it is just really hard to hold, all that we know and not, explode because we have our own stressors. We have our own stuff. It's not just our little people that are, causing the chaos for us. There's our spouses, our partners, our other family members, we have jobs, we have, so there's a whole lot of things going on that we are juggling. And some of those things are, harder than others. And sometimes we just get overwhelmed. And so sometimes our reaction is very quick. We're not thinking about the other person. We're not really thinking ourselves, and we're just flipping our own lids. So that's when we are sort of like ourselves getting off. So what we want to do is try so hard to use our calm to help our child better find calm. And again, it's that same thing. We're not trying to take away that the emotion is happening, but going through that and then finding some coping to calm. And then we can start working on the problem solving. We're not problem solving when things are really tough and things are sort of chaotic. That is not what's going to happen during that time. So some of the things that we can do to show our children that we are listening and that we're validating that we see and or hear that they are having a tough emotion is that staying calm. So that could be, like I said, taking that deep breath, our own counting to 10, whatever that looks like for us, what works. And focusing without distraction. There are so many distractions that we have, and some of those are extremely important things. Like, I own a business, and so I have the distraction of having to do all the things with that. If that means I get a call, or that means I have, but in those moments, we have to be without distraction, focusing on our child that is dealing with tough stuff. Whether we feel it is or not, it is to them. Physically getting on their level is something that I believe is really important, so that our children can tell. And I did this as a teacher too, like really just coming to where our child is. I do not feel that they need to be eye contact back with us, but it is nice if we can look at our child and give those nonverbal cues to them that we are listening to them. We can restate what our child might be saying to us, like, oh, so you're feeling really angry because something happened with a friend today at school. Can you tell me more about that? Right? So you're restating back that you are listening to what they're saying to you. You're restating back that they may have told you what their feeling is right then, right? So that is a really good way for your child to know that you're validating and listening. We want to stay away from, and Sheri, this is like your word right here, but like dramatizing, like over dramatizing what it is, right? So like, I don't want to like throw like gasoline on the fire if my 13-year-old is coming home and having some sort of dramatic experience because of something with a friend. I want to listen, and I want to validate what I hear from her, but I don't need to like over dramatize it. And I also don't want to like, make my child in that moment to feel like she's being victimized, unless that's really true. So I don't want to say that all encompassing, because that is not necessarily true. It could be a serious situation, but in the bigger picture of things, if the 13-year-old comes home and there's been some dramatic experience at school, then I can listen, but I don't want to start throwing more on top of that. That's not going to help. That's going to start riling me up with her, and then we're causing more chaos. And then back to
calm. Yeah, you got to be that
yes,
calm.
yes. And then back to what I was saying before too, like, it isn't our time to disagree with how our child feels. This is what they're saying. This is how they are letting us know, and we need to be that safe place to let us know that this is how I feel. And we're not there to say that it's a wrong feeling. We're not there to relabel the feeling if they're able to label that. We're not there to disregard that they feel that way. Again, we're there to validate, and these are the steps that we can do to really help that. And I'm going to give you some like very specific things that you can say and do here coming up that you can use as sort of your go-to statements, because sometimes that helps us, like even posting them somewhere. So, but sometimes as parents, like, just what are those go-to like few things that we can do in those moments that could also help us stay calm. So we're going to get to that.
We just might need to practice these sometimes, especially if we are very emotional, our kids are very emotional. It takes practice. And like you're saying, post it somewhere, right?
Yes.
So you see it all the time.
Like I have a pad on my desk that's clear. And so I put all the cute notes and things, but like, I definitely have a few like cue words for myself too. Right. It's like, because I'm in the middle of work and I know you just got home from school, but I am busy. And so it's like little things to cue myself.
Yeah.
So again, as we said, remember, these are their feelings, right? Mm-hmm. So we're not there to tell them how they need to feel differently, and we're not there to disagree with how they're feeling. So how we respond really matters. So the next quote I wanted to read to you is, our kids want us to give them a safe space to process their hard feelings more than they want us to fix all their problems. And this is what Sheri was saying as well in the beginning, like, we need to let them feel, and we need to let them fail sometimes. And that is the stuff that is going to help them be stronger and more confident in who they are if we allow them to really work through that stuff. And again, I am not suggesting that we let the 5-year-old figure out how to, like, world problem solve. Like, they need tools. So our job is to work with them and give them those tools in order to help them on how to problem solve. But just because they, don't know yet how to tie their shoe, it doesn't mean that I have to do it every single time, because is the child ever going to learn how if I continue to do it? No. So there is time for maybe learning that out of we're trying to get out the door. But then there's the time where, we got to let them give it a try. And so there are the small, simpler things when our kids are a little bit younger. And then those things start to grow as our kids grow. And those things become a little bit bigger or a little bit tougher for them. But by that time, hopefully, we have worked with and modeled with and helped our children problem solve scenarios that they have been in, or they have watched us problem solve. Hopefully, we are talking about those things at the dinner table. We do. When, my husband and I will talk about things that happen in our day and how we might have problem solved things. Those are ways our children are learning, by what we do, what we say, what we've modeled.
And this is so important because we have to think about long-term parenting, right? And right now I've got one daughter in college and my other two have already gone through. And I was very thankful that they had skills to deal with their emotions before they went off to college. So, start thinking, even if you have little ones or if you've got teenagers, start thinking how this is a skill that is a gift that you're giving them, of learning how to cope with those emotions, because you will not be there to soothe them for the rest of their life.
Yes, that's so important. Yes. So validating our kids' emotions, we're showing them that we value them under all circumstances. So when they're having feelings that are, those tougher feelings, that we are valuing our children no matter what. So even if it looks and sounds really ugly, like, we love them unconditionally and value them under all circumstances. We allow them to feel seen and heard and accepted by us, again, by validating that we hear them, we see them. We are giving our child this empowerment of being able to respond to life's up and downs and the waves that we will continue to travel through life. And as Sheri was saying, like, we're not always going to be there to hold their hand or walk beside them or tell them what to do, right? At some point, part of this is letting them go off into the world without us right there. And even though we might be a phone call away, we want them to be able to respond and know how to navigate life's ups and downs, and know that they can, right? So part of this that I was saying before about that self-confidence and that piece of being resilient and having that grit and traveling through life that way, that is really all about them understanding that they can overcome the tough stuff, that they can work through it, that they can problem solve. So that's again another piece of that, validating their emotions and why it's so important for us to do. So as I said, we are there to walk beside our children by listening and validating, but we are not there to fix it all for them. When hard things happen, someone is there for them. So think about that. When hard things happen, someone will be there for your child, and you will be that person, right? You will be that trusted, caring adult, but that does not mean to always be swooping in to fix it. They have to learn that the tough stuff is, they can navigate it and they can overcome it. And that those moments, right, when those things happen and you watch your kiddo problem solve a situation and get it figured out, and it's like they feel the pride, they feel the strength, You can see it in them at any age, whether it's, like I said, the 5-year-old that finally gets it to tie their shoe, or, you know, your teenager who has worked really hard in their class at school, and they thought how great they were doing and it wasn't turning out that way. And then, you know, maybe they studied a little bit differently and they found a new way to do it. And then, wow, that really worked this time. So really, again, giving some strategies, modeling strategies, letting them pick those up and problem solving that and feeling that self-confidence is super important for them. So the next quote I have here is, when you join a kid in their world, you make a bridge from yours to theirs. Through validating what they're doing and then making a request, you've already formed a connection. So this is all about those phrases that you can use. So get ready. But I've got a few for you that are tried and true, at least over here, and for some other parents that I've worked with as well, but phrases that you can use. So you really wish that you could have another scoop of ice cream. That is me validating that I hear you, that you are really sad right now, that we are all done with dessert tonight, rather than me saying, like, I said you can't have any ice cream. Listen to the difference of that, right? You really wish you could have another scoop of ice cream. I said you can't have any ice cream. I mean, who would you rather listen to? So you
The
really
first one you
wish,
say it, I'm like nodding my head, and then the
I
second
know,
one is
right?
like,
Like, yeah, you really wish you could, right? So we're not saying it in like a talking down at them. We're saying it on a, I'm on your level. I get you. I totally get it. And you can also add that I'd really like another scoop too.
yeah.
So yeah. Okay. And then here we are. I get it. I get it is hard to stop playing, but it is time to brush your teeth for bed. So that again is validating. I get it. Like, wouldn't you want a friend to say that to you, or your spouse or your partner to say, like, I get it, right? It gives you the validation that someone also might feel the same way in the same situation, or at least say, I get it. You feel this way. So saying, I get it, rather than saying, I said, stop playing and go brush your teeth, right? Rather than, I get it. It's really hard to stop playing, but it's time to go brush your teeth for bed. So you're not leaving the negotiation in there for them to, you know, be able to argue the fact that this is what we're doing. Like, this is really what's happening. We're going to brush our teeth for bed, but you're letting them know that you get that it's hard for them to stop playing. So again, I get it. So this next one I love, like, 2 things are true. So you are allowed to feel angry because you want to stay up later, but it is time for bed. So you're letting them know, again, you're validating the fact that they really want to keep staying up, but it's time for bed. So 2 things are true is sort of another way of looking at validating how your child is feeling in a situation. Like, okay, I get that you're feeling this way, but also. So there's that, but also.
And I think on this one, Marcelle, I would even say, instead of but, I would say and.
Oh, I like that. Yes. And also,
Yeah.
I like that. That's a good one. I think I'm going to have to change that. And yes, 2 things are true. And I like that. Oh, I didn't mean to. Oh, well. So the next one is tell me more. So I love using tell me more because oftentimes we as parents can go in and start talking more than what the child would like. And so if we're using a phrase, tell me more about why you are feeling upset right now. Tell me more about why you're feeling frustrated about that. Tell me more about. So tell me more is a great go-to I use very often, because sometimes your child will start telling something and then they kind of are like, maybe they're not ready to talk about it all, or maybe they don't think there's more. But if you sort of give them that validation that you're listening and that you're like, oh, tell me more about that thing, that will help bring up some more communication, typically on whatever that piece is. And this is a very common thing, I think, as parents. We oftentimes want to find punishment is not the same thing as a consequence, right? So in life, there are consequences. Like if I am late to work too many times, I might lose my job. If I am tardy to class too many times, I might not be well prepared for my test. Okay, so that is a consequence, and typically like very natural consequences. So in our house, it is a reminder maybe that it's really cold out. You might want to bring a coat. I don't know what's up with these kids that do not want to wear jackets. But anyways, I mean, come on. But I mean, I'm not going to give you mine when we're out. So those are consequences. I am now going to talk about like punishment. So to me, punishment is like, go to your room. I don't want to see you. I'm done. Or, you know, maybe just like leaving them high and dry and you walking away for like a really long time. It's one thing if I tell my kiddo I need a little break, I'll be right back, but like just disappear. We are not teaching any skills during that time if we are sending them away. Like they're not learning what it is that we were hoping for if we are now punishing them to like, see you later, go in your room and we're done. That can add shame to your child. Like if they're feeling very hurt about something and we have just decided that they're like the crying and it's getting to us and we don't want to deal with it and it's too much, and we just tell them to like go to their room and deal with it, that's like punishing them for the feelings that they're having rather than us leaning into that. So we want our kids to not feel like they're bad because they're feeling something that, again, we may not necessarily agree with, but we need to try and understand. And again, going back to, we need to validate to them that we are there for them and that we hear them and we see them. So those punishments will not teach our children skills, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Marcelle, okay. I want to make sure we've got some questions, so we just need to make sure we load.
So this is right for our parents. So this is the end of our slide. So okay. When our children see us expressing our emotions, they can learn that their own feelings are natural and permissible. They can be expressed and can be talked about. That's an important thing for our children to learn. And that comes from Fred Rogers, who we all just love. So as I said, when parenting feels hard, which for 100% of us, parenting feels hard at some points, we need to acknowledge our own emotions, right? We need to let ourselves know that the feeling we're feeling is right. Like, I am feeling this right now. So validating that to ourselves, right? So maybe it feels hard because it actually is hard. Like, that's okay. It is hard. We need to give ourselves permission. Like, I'm allowed to feel this way. And this is exactly how I'm feeling right now. So that's giving your own validation to yourself. Like, wouldn't you want like your friend or your partner or your spouse to validate to you, like, oh, you know, and not push it aside? So we need to do that to ourselves. Like, we want to be seen and validated too. So it's really important that we think about what that looks like in our households and how we are modeling it, doing it, and showing it to our children. Because what a beautiful thing if our child turns around and has that empathy and care for a sibling, a cousin, or even a parent or a friend in their life. So it all trickles down to all of the facets that we belong to, whether it's a sibling, a friend, a peer, or later on a coworker. So thank you. I would love to look at our questions. What do we have?
We have great questions. Okay. First question. Sometimes my child feels sadness over, for example, the way friends are treating them. I don't always know how to handle those emotions when I myself agree that it is an unfortunate situation. I want to commiserate with them, but then I don't know how to encourage them to get them through the sad feelings.
Oh, Well, I've been there too, when my, children have felt sad about something that's happened with a friend. I think sometimes it's hard for us as parents to like see our child feeling sad about something that like we agree with. Like I would feel sad about that too, right? And I think it's okay that we let them know that would make me feel sad as well. Like I can understand that you're feeling sad about that. And those are those tell me more moments, I feel that like instead of you piling on all the things and like how you would fix it and what you would do, like gain a little bit from your kiddo in that moment. And if they're totally unsure and they don't know, or they're not quite old enough to be able to problem solve that, maybe give like an idea and ask them, in that situation, would doing this sound like something that would work for you? I think it's important that we give them some agency in being able to also be helpful in deciding how to problem solve that. And so giving them some of that is great, but I think it's okay to let our kiddos know that would make me feel really sad too, you know? Um, and we also have to be careful too, because kids will quickly forget sometimes, not all the time, but like they may quickly forget and they go to school the next day or wherever to their friend's house, or they see them running around and they're just good. Like they're just kind of over it. And that's okay. Like depending on the situation, we don't need to pull them back into it because it angered us or upset us so much. So
Yes, exactly.
those are kind of those resilient pieces of our children that sometimes we get more upset sometimes
Right.
for them.
Right. Nobody wants their kids to feel bad. And especially, I'm actually going to put in the chat box. I'm doing a webinar in a couple weeks. It's called Girl Drama, How to Support Your Daughter Through It. And we go through this in a little more detail. So if you're wanting more support on that, you can join us for that. Okay, so, and I think on that one, I will say quickly, it says I want to commiserate with them, and commiserate's the thing, like you don't want to wallow in that. That kind of brings that, word back. You want to validate their feelings. You can express yours, but make sure they're not bigger than your child's, because then it becomes you and not them. And I hear from a lot of kids, I don't want to tell my parents about what's going on because they get too upset about things. So we just have to remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. What do we say when my kiddo, after every midterm, cries that she's not good enough? We have many times told her that her career path is challenging, but we support if she needs to make any changes.
Oh, these kids are so hard on themselves about
Yeah.
all this kind of stuff. And it's really, I mean, as parents, I think it breaks our heart when our kiddos are feeling those pressures. And gosh, sometimes it's their personality, it's just who that child is. And so we need to be there to help them cope with um, what that not good enough feeling is coming from, right? So why is the child feeling this way? What standard is it that they're trying to feel good enough for? Is it their own? Is it someone else's? Is it because of whatever this career path is? They feel like they need to, hit a certain mark. But I guess I would ask, what are you feeling not good enough for? Because I don't know that it's hard because I don't know the exact situation. Obviously, this seems like it's a high school-ish student, if not a college student. But yeah, I mean, I would say that the emotions that come along with our own self, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Like our own self pressures can be really, really challenging to get through. And part of that is, like I said, maybe wondering a bit what this child wants to feel good enough for. Like, what is it? What are they trying to measure up to?
Yeah, in those situations, I think a lot of times what we do, whether it's, oh, I feel so fat, or I'm so stupid, or, our kids throw things out. A lot of times what we want to do, instead of kind of getting to the feeling, we combat that. No, you're beautiful. No, you're really smart. No, and they're just going to come back with, fight that. So I'm lean into the feelings on that rather than trying to solve the whole issue in that point. Maybe she just needs, with all that pressure of taking the midterms, maybe they just need to let that pressure out from being so stressed about it. So, okay, next one. How do you convey what is a realistic reaction to an emotion without invalidating it?
That's a good one. So we're going to see unrealistic reactions in our opinion, what we might see coming from like a toddler or a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old or even our 15-year-olds. But again, I think that there's a few ways to deal with that. I wouldn't in that moment say like, this is a total overreaction of the situation. I would move through that and then I would take time to reflect. Like, do you think that, that reaction really was fitting for the situation? And I would obviously only in probably an older child have that sort of like very big question. Otherwise, I might say to them, like, next time, how could we react to that or respond to that maybe differently, And so you're not invalidating the emotion, but you're sort of saying like, there are some other like responses to this that might have been a little less chaotic.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay, but during that moment, like during the breakdown, you are not going to have that type of dialogue or conversation or learning. There's no learning going on in that time of the reaction.
Yeah, in the big feelings moment, your logical part of your brain goes offline. So if you're trying to bring in logic in that moment, it's not going to do any good. So
right.
I would also say like around puberty, there's a lot of emotions that are way kind of out of whack for the situation. It's really good to talk to your kids about that when you start to see them go through puberty, which is usually the chemicals are going to kick in before you see any physical changes. But that brings out these like maybe crying episodes or anger episodes. And honestly, if you ask them why, they don't even know. So it's okay to have that conversation about sometimes your emotions don't actually match the situation, and you can talk about puberty and all those fun things.
Well, and I would say too that with hopefully with conversations at home and then the social emotional curriculums through our schools, like we do talk a lot about like, what is this emotion and what is this reaction and what is the situation? And so I do think that hopefully there's a lot of learning around that. Like the tools that I created are really not only for a classroom, but they're for home. And it's because we need to remember that a lot of this is at home. It's not just a school curriculum piece. It's a at home, in our homes, modeling, using tools, having discussions, right? So these are all things that we are learning at home and outside in our community and inside of our school buildings. So I do believe that some of that discussion around reactions and our emotions and how our emotions come on and what we feel in our bodies, those discussions are happening. And so continue those at home as well.
Yes, definitely. Marcelle, I want to be mindful of your time. Are you okay to stay a couple more minutes to finish up other questions?
Yeah.
Okay. And for those of you, if you have to pop off before you leave, just put in the chat box something that you got from tonight, an aha moment or something that you will kind of look at a little bit differently. And we will have a recording for this. So if you have to hop off, we totally understand. Okay, next question. How do we share the calm, which we talked about, right? When there are other necessary things that are time bound, like my child wanting to talk to me when I have a meeting, needing to drop off my child to school before leaving for work so I can be on time. What's the best way to deal with this? Showing that it's important but needs to be dealt with later. Such a good question because all of us are probably thinking the same thing.
Right? Yes, I do love this question as well. I think you just need to tell them, like, you know what? Right now, we really need to go to school, or I really need to go into this meeting. And it's sort of that, and like two things are true, right? Like, I know that you're feeling upset or whatever the emotion is, right? I know that you're feeling really angry right now. And I really want to spend time, talking or helping or supporting you. But right now, we really need to get out the door for school. So as soon as you come home today, let's revisit this. I love you. Have your hugs, your loves, whatever you do as a family, making sure that child really has that engagement and support, knowing that the love is there, whatever that thing is. It could have been a at home, parent child situation. It could have been a sibling situation, or it's something else that's blown up. But just be honest. Like, two things are true. You're
Yes,
feeling this way, and I want to be there, and I am here, but we really have to go, or I really need to go into this meeting. It's important for my job that I'm on time.
that's great. So just be good communication with it, and validating feelings once again, validating it and saying, yeah, we'll talk about this later. Chances are half the time when you come back like after school, they're already over it, depending on, but
Yeah.
but you said in the moment, I know you're feeling this is important, and we've got to get you to school. Okay. Um, how do you how do you deal with how do you deal if you just don't agree with an opinion that your adult kid has?
Well, I think opinions are things that we all, uniquely have. And I think that that is a very normal thing that we don't all, I mean, I sit on very different sides of opinions when it comes to discussing things with my mom, but we're still very close and we try and have those discussions. And I think one of the themes that I've heard a lot about is, people can't have those discussions and people feel too many, like too many tough emotions around, the things that they disagree with. But I said this earlier, our emotions too come from the things that we care about. So sometimes we get a bit emotional about the things that we have opinions on, but it's important that we listen to someone else. And it doesn't mean that we have to agree, but it's good to validate that we're listening to them. So I do think it comes back to that, like, validation. Like, I hear that we are on, two different sides of the coin with this, and that's okay. And that to me is what sort of makes our world, beautiful, is that we don't all agree and we have different opinions about things.
Yes. And this, by the way, is not just adult kids. As they want to start individuating from you, they may start pushing things away that are core values or things super important to you. Many times they'll circle back, but in the individuation process, they're like, I'm going to push you away, and I'm going to do this by pushing away your values and your interests and all of that. Okay,
Yes.
we have a lot more questions. So I think what we're going to do, we're going to take the next few
Okay.
questions here and we'll answer
Perfect.
them live. And
Okay.
then, Marcelle, maybe you and I can get back together and answer the rest of the questions and record
Sure.
it and then share it,
Absolutely.
so that we're not going way over tonight.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, let me look through here really quick. Okay, this is a good one, and this is true, and I totally understand what this question is about. What do
Okay.
you do for kids who really hate these explicit forms of affirming? You really wish, I get it, I hear you, all of that,
Yeah.
or validating feelings, and whom this makes them more angry and dysregulated.
Yeah.
I'll
So,
let you answer first, and then I'll answer from my perspective too.
so I would call these like those really deep feeling kiddos, and I have one. I have I have a son who's 11, and things are very black and white, and we don't have a lot of flexibility. He's very bright. He he likes to give his opinion, his reason, and that is that. So I can definitely understand that piece. I used to talk about deep breathing and he thought I made it up somewhere. And so he does use breath now, but he really thought like I just created that out of nowhere and that can't help me and I'm not doing that, you know. And then one day he came home from school, he's like, so we did deep breathing today,
Yeah.
you know. So I understand that piece of that sort of throwing your child further into chaos and spiraling. So I do believe that there are other ways that we can approach those children in those situations. And I think that that is where it becomes sort of those unique situations where what does work for my child. And if you haven't quite found that yet, you know, the more we try things, and I would say like 1 time, 2 times, 3 times doesn't necessarily let us know that that's not working. But if you've repeatedly tried something and it's just really not what your child go-to is to help dysregulate the situation, then I do think that you need to continue to look for different strategies, because there will be something that will help and that will resonate with your child that will help them find calm. Sometimes it's tactile, visual, like there are other ways to do this than using our words and communicating to our children. So I know some children could really use like touch is something that helps, or maybe they don't want to be touched, you know, so maybe it's squeezing tools or fidgets or things that like can calm them before then we can start letting them know what boundaries we've set and how this is going to go. So that's my take. Sheri?
Yeah. Yes. And I think sometimes it's just shortening it up, like you seem angry, or you might be angry, or are you angry? Just, you know, like the shortening. And I think, thinking to my own kids, like it sometimes, if it feels formulaic a little bit, where they hear the same words over and over, they're like, oh, they're doing that thing again, you know, my mom's using that tool. So sometimes you need to soften it somehow, make it a little more subtle, but the same ideas of acknowledgement of the feelings. And like you said, Marcelle, it may be in your family, the acknowledgement is touching them on their shoulder, or that you hand them a certain object, or you know, something along those lines. You have to figure that out. If you have a child who is very emotionally dysregulated, you got to just continue to explore and figure out what those things are. Okay, so I think we're gonna have to stop here, and I'm so sorry, because it's a great conversation, lots of good information, and tons of follow-up questions. So as I said, what I'm gonna do is, Marcelle, you and I will find a time to go through these, and we'll figure out how to get that to everybody. If you're registered, we've got your email, so we can send those out and get all those questions. Great questions, by the way. We will get those answered.
Great.
Excellent. Okay, so that is it for tonight. I'm so sorry. I feel like we could take 2 more hours and still be talking, Marcelle. So I would just like to request everybody who's still on here, let's do at the bottom, you can see where there's reactions. Let's give Marcelle some love. You can give like heart or claps or something like that. There we go.
Thank you.
Look
Thank
at all
you
the
so
love
much for
coming our
having
way.
me. Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
And I loved the questions and conversation that came out of it. So thank you so much.
It's great. Very, very good to have you here. Lots of great learning moments, lots of great questions. And we will make sure to share this recording with everybody as well. So just put something in the chat again to let us know what you got from this. And as always, let us know. You can contact us, let us know if there's a topic that you really want to hear more about. And we will look to do that. I still have 3 slots for the parent chats for the semester that I'm looking to put some good topics in there. So let us know. All right. Good night, everybody. I appreciate you being here. As always, loved it. And Marcelle, we really, really appreciate you coming and spending your time with us. All right. Good night, everyone.